that has a different background of what Egypt was about, and we call it the indigenous tradition. And that book set me on the mark. In 1992, I went to Egypt for the first time, and I met the man who is my teacher, and his name is Abdel Hakim Awayan. Everybody knows him as Hakim. He's a well-known tour guide. He is retired now, but he has over 50 years' experience in the field as a tour guide. Most people have been to Egypt and say, oh, I know Hakim. He's a great tour guide. Well, in the early 1990s, he also revealed himself as an indigenous wisdom keeper, part of an oral tradition. Now, people who know Native American traditions, who studied the Native American tradition, know that the oral tradition, and in part in Asia, is very much a part of these cultures. Well, it's also as part of Africa, but no one has ever considered, certainly not Egyptologists, that there is an oral tradition. And Hakim represents that. His tribe, the Awayani tribe, which is called the Eye tribe, everybody's wearing an eye of Horus, an eye of Ra, represents this tribe. They not only kept the history of their own tribe, they kept the history of all tribes. So what we present to you is over 65,000 years of oral tradition, and stating that there was a previous civilization before what is known as dynastic Egypt, before what is known as Egypt to Egyptologists, that existed and was very highly advanced, built the pyramids, carved the Sphinx. And that's what we're going to show you. And again, I'm going to purposefully make this brief so we can get into the slides. We have a lot of slides to show. And I probably won't even have time for many questions, because what I certainly do not want to do is take 1 minute away from Christopher's wonderful presentation. But since I'm going to be here, we'll be here this evening, tomorrow, and if questions, you can always approach me. But we probably won't have much time, because we'll probably go right to the end. But first of all, if we're going to reestablish this idea, we're going to create a whole new discipline, we have to start with the name itself, Egypt. Egypt is the name of the country in northeastern Africa today. That was not the name of the ancient civilization. And this is how it was derived. Egypt is actually a Greek word, or a derivation of a Greek word, which was a contraction called He-Ge-Petos, which became Egyptos, which is where Egypt comes from. Now, this Greek word actually comes from the ancient term Het Ka Ptah. And by the way, Egyptos is where the word Koptos comes from, where the word Coptic Christian comes from, and where the town of Koptos was from. But the ancient term was Het Ka Ptah. Het means place. Now, Ka is a subject we can go on for hours in a lecture, too. Many people have talked about Ka, written books about Ka, think they know what it means. But it actually, the best way to translate it would be the etheric double, or the astral body, or we prefer the definition, the physical projection of the spirit, which is the personality, which is what attaches itself to the body, not the physical body, where the Egyptians added a T to it, Khat or Chet, which meant organs of body. So it actually is the personality. But these people believe that the personality is connected to the body. So this is why in the tombs that you see in Egypt, they made offerings to the Ka. It's like what you could say in New Age terms, the etheric body or the double. And Ptah is a whole series, we could give hours of lecture on itself, but so-called one of creator gods, which is not correct, but we'll use that because you're all familiar with that. So Ptah, so this meant the place where the physical projection of Ptah manifested. And it was only one area, one site, which the Greeks called Memphis. The ancient term was Menefer. It was the capital of the ancient dynastic civilization. One area. The ancients called their civilization Kemet. And actually, that's a later derivation. The real term was Chem. And it's even in existence today because the Egyptians, one of their terms, the Arabic term for Egypt is Al-Chem. Does that name sound familiar? Alchemy. That's where alchemy comes from. It's the arts and sciences of ancient Kemet. So Kemet is the word. It meant the black land. Now people will ask me, well, what does that mean? Well, basically, this civilization was always based on a river, the Nile. Now, not the Nile as she is today, as we're going to discuss briefly. Again, in my book is more detail. The ancient civilization I'm talking about had an ancient river, which we call the Nile, which was named by a German researcher named Blankenhorn in the early 20th century, which is all Western desert today. But this river was huge. It was 100 miles across, thousands of miles long. All of northern Africa at one time was all lush and green with this great river with tributaries. The desert as it is today is less than 10,000 years old. So this civilization was pre-desert. So it was based on this ancient river, the Nile, the Nile, which is Western desert. And the word means the black land It's the alluvial, dark, rich soil that the river deposits when she floods. And that was the basis of the civilization. You're going to see a slide I'm going to show you of Egypt. And people are amazed that all this civilization was a thin strip of green land around the river, and the rest was desert. That's dynastic times. But even so, the ancient people called it the black land, meaning the rich soil deposited by the river where they grew their crops, their civilization. So, first thing we say is we don't teach Egyptology. Chris introduces me as an Egyptologist. Well, I'm not. I'm a chematologist. And it's a whole new discipline. So, before you have a framework for what we're going to show you, we also still have to lay a groundwork. And one of the major themes of teaching that my teacher gives to us is the fact of cycles. Now, I'm called a paradigm buster, so is David. And it's an honor to follow David in presentation because I consider him not only a friend, my publisher, but perhaps one of the great diffusionist researchers that's ever lived. And his presentation showed that, how he's able to pull things from all areas of the world which he has seen, he has been, to show the similarities. And we are diffusionists, no doubt about it. And in fact, I can't believe anybody could be an isolationist. But one of the major paradigms that want to see destroyed completely is this idea of linear evolution, that we've always just gone on a straight line from the primitive to the complex. This is total nonsense. Everything in nature moves in cycles, and that's what indigenous people teach, cycles, and that's what we're presenting to you, cycles. And what we are now is just the end of a cycle. So my teacher has given us what are called the 5 stages of the sun, and let's do that, because this is a very important teaching that forms the basis of what we're talking about. Now, this is kind of different than you heard before, because we're not talking about sun gods. We're talking about teachings that exist before religion, and this is what my second book is about, From Light into Darkness, where I'm going to make a distinct difference between spirituality and religion, and where I state unequivocally that religion is the business that evolved of spirituality. That's why it's darkness. First stage is called Keper, which we know as the scarab beetle. Everybody likes Egyptian iconography, has seen the scarab beetle, also known as the driller. Why is it called the driller? Well, the scarab beetle is an unusual little insect because it takes a bowl of dung, animal waste, rolls it up, and then deposits its eggs in the dung. So when the young are born, they immediately have a food supply. So that's why it's called the driller. It's also became a symbol. The first stage of the sun is the dawn, when the sun comes up. Because as a great teacher, R.A. Schwaller de Lubitsch, who, if you've ever heard of John Anthony West, is the greatest proponent of this man's teachings, he made the statement that the Egyptians, Cometians, used the known to evoke the unknown. And what they saw with this little beetle is pushing the ball of dung in front of itself daytime. They said, well, it was like bringing the sun disk at dawn, pushing the sun. So it became a symbol of dawn. So that's the first stage, the sun at dawn. The second stage is the famous name we all know of the sun, supposedly Ra. But here we're telling you, according to the indigenous teachings, Ra is only 1/5 of this understanding of the sun, not a god by itself. But we'll get to that. Ra means the stubborn, often depicted by a ram. In ancient Egypt, even though they had donkeys, they considered the ram to be a real stubborn animal. So that's the symbol of Ra. Represents the sun at noon. And I'm also going to return to what this means. Let's get the 5 stages out first. Third one is called Un, known as the wise. Often depicted as just a mature man standing on a staff. Next stage, Aten, which is going to be a big aspect in the book I'm writing now. In the book I'm writing now, I'm talking about the last 2 stages, the stage of Aten and the stage of Amen, which I'll discuss with you. Aten means the wiser. This is like twilight. This is afternoon sun. Twilight, when the sun is at its peak and then starts to come down. And the last stage is known as Amen, written many different ways. And this means the hidden. And this is why we'll get to what we're talking about.